Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have a good day, everyone. Today, we Group 4 will present to you about the Great Depression, roots, characteristics, and consequence. Content. Background and root will present by myself, while characteristic and consequence will present by my friend Rushdan. Now we go to the first, which is background. So, what is depression? Depression is a very last recession period during which is a real GDP, gross domestic product, is falling continuously. It is also causing unemployment to shoot up rapidly and productivity goes down significantly. You can see I put in my slide the graph about unemployment. In 1929 until 1939, there are rapid unemployment. Now, before Before the Great Depression, the world has just recovered from World War One, which is World War One happened from July 28, 1914 until November 11, 1918. Put in my slide the three pictures from World War One, and after that, the American faced the period called the Roaring Twenties. The Roaring Twenties is about economic growth and widespread prosperity. Is during this time. This is interesting fact. During this time, America country, become the richest country in the world. And from 1920 to 1929, total wealth in the US more than double, and individual American started investing in the market in a big way. Because of market, uh, stock market give can give huge profit in the fast way. So American during that time spend their saving for invest in the market, and there are also people who not share on margin. Margin is paying a percentage of the stock price at a down payment and borrowing the rest. Moreover, financial institutions became heavily involved in stock market speculation. As a result, the stock markets keep on climbing until October 1929, but after that, everything come crashing down. So the Great Depression happened, and this Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world, and it occurred from 24 October 1939 until 1939. That took almost 10 years. As you can see in this picture, the boy holding a sign that why cannot you give me my dad a job? Show us how bad this situation during the Great Depression. Now we go to the roots or the causes of the Great Depression. 4 points for the roots of the Great Depression. First, stock market crash. Second, oversupply and overproduction problem. Third, banking panic, and the last one, policy decision. Now we go to the now we go to the first one, stock market crash. By 1959, many Americans were invested in the stock market. The stock market had become the most visible symbol of a prosperous American economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was the barometer of the stock market works. The Dow is a measure based on the price of 30 large firms. Through most of the 1920s, stock price rose steadily. The Dow reached a high in 1929 of 361 points. So by 1929, 4 million Americans owned stocks. It shows us how big or how much invested during that time. In September, the stock market has come and is the up and down movement. On October 29, stock market crash happened. At known as Black Tuesday, the bottom fell out. The result, 16.4 million shares were sold that day, and people who had bought on margin ready to start with huge dip. You can see the newspaper about Black Tuesday. This is a graph about Dow Jones Industry Average from 1937 until 1930. Now, we go to the second one, which is oversupply and overproduction problems. Mass production power in the 1930s consumer booms led to overproduction on the part of many business and in agriculture, which is they started having to sell goods at a loss. For example, in agriculture during World War One, farmers had bought more machinery to boost production, which means a costly move that put them in the debt. But in the post-war economy, they ended up producing far more supplying than consumer needed, and it all resulted in drop in price, both agriculture and industry, which decimate profit and hurt already overextended enterprises. Now we go to the third point, banking panic. Banking panic arises when many depositors simultaneously lose confidence in the solvency of bank and demand that their bank deposit be paid to them in cash. Bank, which is typically hold only a fraction of deposit cash reserve, must liquidate loans in order to raise the required cash. This this price of a hasty liquidation can cause even a previously solvent bank to fail. And banking panics occur in the fall of the 1930, spring of the 1931, the fall of the 1931, and the fall of the 1932. By 1933, one piece of the bank in existence at the start of 1930 had failed. As you can see, and the depositors in front of bank demand wanted to claim their bank deposits. Now we go to the last one, which is policy decision. Early tariff of 1930. Congress imposed very hard tax on imported goods, encouraged consumption of American goods, and this increased employment. But different happened, which is other countries imposed tax on American products, which is an American producer incur high cost of production due to high tax on imported material used in production as part. As a result, in next 2 years, U.S. import fell 40%. You can see in this paper, President Obama signed tariff bill or smooth Hawley tariff of 1930. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, I will continue the presentation about the characteristic of the Great Depression in 1929 1989. Okay, the first of all, of course, the economic had been the first characteristic of the Great Depression, and it's following by politics, social, unemployment, banking, stock market, and trade. Okay, for the economics, uh, for the 5 years of the depression, the economic shrank until 50%. In 1929, economic output was $105 billion as measured by the gross domestic product, and the economic began shrinking in August 1929, and at the end of the year, 650 banks had in bad situation or failed to be function as usual. In 1930, the economic shrank another 8.5%, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and GDP at that time fell 16.1% in 1931 and 23.2% in 1932. This show that the economic in United States worse and worse. And then by 1933, the country had suffered at least 4 years of economic contraction, and part of the contraction was due to deflation. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the consumer price index fell to 27% between November 1929 to March 1933. The deflation or the falling prices sent many firms into worse situation, and into bankrupt. And the new government at that time, with the new president, had a new initiative that called New Deals. And the New Deal spending boost to GDP, and that GDP of United States grows by 70% in 1934. But the government cut back on the New Deal spending in 1938 because the depression returned and the economy again shrank into 6.3%. We move to politics matters. The depression affected politics by shaking confidence in unfettered capitalism, and then the type of laissez-faire economic that implemented by the President Herbert Hoover had been failed at that time. As a result, the political situation in US in peak situation, and at that time the people are very confident with present the present president, which was President Herbert Hoover. And then President Franklin Roosevelt has been chosen by the people of the United States. And then the New Deal that I just thought that the new initiative by the US government had been worked. In 1934, the economy grew to 17% and unemployment declined. And then we move to social. The Great Depression also affected the social in the United States at that time. The Dust Bowl drought destroyed farming in the Midwest. To make things worse, prices for agricultural products dropped to their lowest level since the Civil War. As a farmer left in search of work, and they became homeless and jobless. Almost 6,000 shanty towns called Hooverville sprang up in the 1930s. In 1933, the prohibition was repealed. We move to unemployment. In 1928, the final year of the Roaring Twenties, unemployment was 4.2%, but because of the Great Depression, by 1938, it had more than doubled. It's up to 8.7%. Almost 15 million people were out of work at that time. That is the highest unemployment rate ever that recorded in America at that time. Then we move to the banking. During the Great Depression, 1/3 of all banks in the United States failed to be function as usual. By 1933, 4,000 banks had failed because of many depositors bring out their money to invest in the stock market. As a result, the depositors lost 140 billion US dollar, and people at that time were stunned to find out that bank had used their deposit. And this situation had made the situation in the America unstable situation, and the people rushing use their money to invest into the stock market. The situation making bank in worse situation. And then the stock market lost 19% of its value between 1929 and 1932. It didn't recover for 25 years. People lost all confidence in Wall Street markets. Businesses, banks, and individual investors were wiped out. Even the people who had invested also lost money. We can see that as consequence of the unstable economic situation in America bring worse situation, and the people who had invest also lost their money. And we move to trade. As a country's economy worsened, they erected trade barriers to protect local industry. In 1930, the Congress passed the Smooth-Hawley Tariff, hoping to protect US jobs. Other countries retaliated, and then its great trading bloc based on national alliance and trade currencies. World trade plummeted into 66% as measured in dollars and 25% in the total numbers of units. And then by 1939, it was below its level in 1929. Here the US GDP for the first 5 years of in the Great Depression era. You can read it in 1929 until 1933. And then we move to the consequences. The consequences of the Great Depression in the economic aspect, the preparation of World War II sent growth up 7% in 1939 and 10% in 1940. The next year, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and the United States entered World War II. And the New Deal and spending for World War II shift the economy from a pure free market to a mixed economy. This shows that the US government at that time exchanged their economic type based on the situation at that time. And the timeline of the Great Depression shows this was a gradual and tough necessary process. In the politics, the New Deal worked. In 1934, the economy grew 17% and unemployment declined. But FDR became concerned about adding to 5 trillion US debt. And at that time, Roosevelt he cut back government spending in 1938, and the depression continued. And the politicians relied, instead of deficit spending, tax cuts and other forms of expansionary fiscal policy. And the depression ended in 1939 as government spent ramped up for World War II. This change in spending led to the mistaken belief that military spending is good for the economy. In the social aspect, in 1933, prohibition was repealed that allowed the government to collect taxes and sales of the now legal alcohol. And FDR used the money to help pay for the New Deal. And then the depression was so severe and lasted so long that many people thought this was the end of the American dream. And the deflation, the price fell 30% between 1930 until 1932. The deflation helped consumers whose income had fallen, but it hurt the effect is come to farmers, businesses, and homes owners to recover their uh, financial problem at that time. Their mortgage payment had fallen 30%. As a result, many default and they lost everything and became migrants looking for the work uh, wherever they could find it. Here, the price changes during the depression years from 1929 until 1941. We can see the deflation is going down until negative 10.3, and then it rose up after the Great Depression era in 1941 by 9.9%. As a long-term impact, the success of the New Deal made Americans expect that the government would save them from any economic crisis. Then the New Deal signaled that they could rely on the federal government instead. They also relied on themselves towards the Great Depression. FDR modified the gold standard to protect the dollar's values. And then that set a precedent for President Richard Nixon to end it completely in 1973. The New Deal Public Work Administration (PWA) built many of today's landmarks, such as Iconic Building and the Chrysler Building, Rockefeller Center, Dealey Plaza in Dallas. Bridge include San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, New York's Triborough Bridge, and the Florida Keys Overseas Highway. And then other Depression era public work included LaGuardia Airport, the Lincoln Tunnel, and Hoover Dam. Also, 3 entire towns were constructed: Greendale, Wisconsin, Green Hill, Ohio, Greenbelt, and Maryland. As a consequence from the Great Depression, we can see, as a conclusion, we can see that the Great Depression have give many bad impact to the economic situation, also the political situation, and social situation in the US at the time. But the initiative that US government use or initiate, it helped to make the American dream alive. And from this historical story or historical situation, that we can learn about the stability of the economic must be in a balance, not imbalance, because in imbalance situation, this thing could be happen again. As we can see now, the pandemic also affected the economic, social, and politics in the entire of the world. But the Great Depression is caused by the imbalanced economic system, and because of over investor in the stock market, in the Wall Street, and that consequence can we see it as a bad consequence, and it as a good for the long impact of to the US government. Okay, it's all from us. Thank you for listening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi